next sentence speaks to this having an entitlement, shall be entitled to. And while we've been reading that in context, many of us read that to say, well, you know, they're entitled to apply at the age of 18. But if we really look at that, and we say what entitlement means, and we say it's as of a right, we look at the Darcy Ryan case, a major case in the Bahamas in the 1980s, when he was also lobbying to get citizenship. And he got citizenship because the Lords ruled that, you know, an entitlement means as of right.
Right.
He got his citizenship. His own was a little different, but the point, what I said before, the Bahamas went over to be an independent nation from the British rule. But the point what I'm making here is that just the fact of the general scenario, the general gist of what the law lords had talked about was that there was this entitlement that means as of right. Now, we keep looking at that and overlooking at the system to read that, well, you know, they're just entitled to apply. And they look at it, when I say they, the Haitian nationals who I'm writing here, who are lawyers, doctors, Indians, and chiefs, just like everybody else. These are just not poor people without any access to advice. And their advice has been, even from some of the embassies elsewhere, that, you know, that, yeah, you could be okay, just get there. And so what we have is an influx of people who are having what we call anchor babies to make sure that once they're there, they can stay. And when I say anchor babies, you hear that, children, America, the children at the forefront, the children at the forefront. I wonder your thoughts about that. How do you put your focus on this to make us understand, notwithstanding that you had already been here before for a whole 8-part series on the Constitution. But this is the real crux of the matter, hey? This whole part about immigration and migration.
I think, first of all, I'd like to address this challenge from the point of view of principles. Principles of how it affects national development of the country, how it affects security of a nation, how it affects, of course, the unity of a nation, and how it affects also the safety of the people. These, to me, are big issues that any country should be concerned about. And I'd like to begin by saying that the most important component in any country is law. It's not government, it's law. And the law is more important than government. Governments are hired by the people to obey the law themselves and to also mete out the justice that the law provides. Secondly, the first law of life is just humanity. We have to protect human dignity, human life, human value. The greatest ideal of nations is freedom. Everyone wants to be free, and I think all the social unrest in the world is motivated by that internal human desire to be free. However, freedom without law is anarchy. And I want to repeat that. Freedom without law is anarchy. You cannot just say I want to be free. Freedom requires law. Because law protects freedom from anarchy. And we have to ask ourselves, if nations are built on law, then what are the principles of nations? I want to begin with this. It's very key. We define a nation as a community of people who are committed to a common heritage, language, law, land, jurisprudence, ideals, values, governance, submitted to one, hopefully, deity. Nations must understand. I speak now to the Bahamas. I speak to every country that may be tuned in. We must remember some things. Number one, all nations are nations of immigrants, including the Bahamas. All nations are products of immigrants. That includes America, that includes Mexico, that includes Honduras. The colonization has done that to the world. Secondly, all nations are a collection of tribes. One of the greatest challenges in Africa and all the countries I've been to is tribalism, this sense of clannishness. But all nations are results of a collection of tribes. Even some of the black people in the Bahamas historically didn't come from the same tribes, but we met in the same piece of rock. Thirdly, all nations are a collection of cultures. All nations. You study any country, it's a collection of different cultures. People bring cultures with them. Culture is in people, it's not in land. Wherever people go, culture comes. Fourthly, all nations are a collection of races. And that includes, of course, the ethnic issues that we deal with. All countries are made of this collection of races. And fifth, all nations are a collection of philosophies. People bring their philosophical perspective of life with them. And finally, all nations are a collection of beliefs. People come together with different beliefs. Now, you can can see right away that there's potential for a whole lot of problems, because you have all these differences coming together to make up a nation. What makes a nation successful, then, is the question. If there's so much diversity in the coming together of peoples, the question is, what makes a nation successful? The answer is not difficult. The answer is unity. If you can unify a people from 1,000 diversities, that becomes a powerful statement in life. So the question is, how do you unify diversity? I'm going to give you quickly a list of 14 things that can unify a country, which makes a country a country. And these are the components of nations, and all nations must understand them and protect them. First of all, what makes a nation is one land, a common physical property, land. Secondly, one national vision. They have to come together for a reason. For example, America was created because of a desire for religious freedom. And they've moved away from that since then, but that was the reason why the Pilgrims left Europe, why the founding fathers of America came and ran away from the oppression of the Catholicism in Europe, etc. They had one vision. Secondly, a nation is made of one language. This is very key. You cannot have 3 or 4 languages in a country. And that's very important, because language is to a country like blood is to a body. It is the very essence of communication of the people. You cannot have people having different understandings and different definitions of words. So language, you can have one language for a nation to be unified. Fourthly, one constitution. That means the people that have one common aspirations that they desire to pursue. Number 5, all nations must have a common law, body of law, that they all agree to abide by. 6, they must have one government. They must have one government. That's important, because right now in Grand Bahama, for example, in Freeport, we're having this issue of 2 governments in our country, and we're not even talking about it, but basically we are having clashes because you can't have a country with 2 governments.
You're right, because one government cut off the lights for the school's children.
I don't want to touch it right now, but
I'm just saying. I see your point.
You see what I'm going.
The other government says we'll pay the bill.
Well, you know, any army with 2 heads is a monster. So right now, according to our context of Freeport, we have a monster. Number 7, all countries rather must have a common ideal. What are the ideals that we embrace as important to us? For example, human dignity, freedom, opportunity, level playing fields, no discrimination based on race and color and creed or whatever. So we have common ideas. Then number 8, all countries must be built on common values. And this is a discussion going on right now in the world. What do we value, what do we not value? Number 9, unity is built on common morals. We must have certain common moral convictions that we believe. In other words, could you abuse children? In some countries they're trying to say that, at the age of 11 or 10, it's okay to have sex with a child, is that the kind of moral standards we want? So every country must have a common set of moral standards. And then number 10, they must have a common authority. This is very important. I use the term authority in the sense of what do we consider supreme authority that makes a country one? In this case, what is your reference for authority? In some countries, it is one God. For example, Israel was one God. Right. In some other countries, it may be another type of reference. But there's got to be a common reference. We agree this is the reference for our authority. Number 11, a country must have a common culture. Now, this is a challenge again, because language is part of culture. But there must be a common element to a culture. There may be uniqueness of expressions of culture, but there must be one overall arching culture that we believe. For example, the culture of work, the culture of effort, the culture of excellence, the culture of service, the culture of respect. In other words, there's got to be a common culture among the people. And then number 12, there must be common standards that we agree on. And again, that's a whole new discussion. Number 13, the nation must be guided by a common national commitment to defend it as a people. In other words, all the people got to be agreed that they're going to defend their country. If a foreign body comes into your country, and you may be historically attached to that body, do you defend the nation you are in, or do you go with the nation that you were historically part of? Yeah. It's very serious. You got to have a common spirit of defense of your country. You can't have 2 allegiances, okay? And then number 14, there must be a common standard, and I call it the flag. Matter of fact, the word flag actually is from the word standard. That's what it means, standard. and it means that we have one common standard to be adhered to. A flag, therefore, is not a piece of cloth. A flag is actually the standard of the country. Whenever, in history, whenever armies went to war, the flag of that country was always leading the army. It meant that the whole country was going to war. That flag represented the country. And they did everything possible to keep that flag flying. You know, an army lost when the flag fell. So that's why you may see a picture some years ago with Americans holding the flag and the soldiers, you know, a picture that design there. That is important. And the entire American anthem is not about people or about land. It's about a flag. So when you talk about celebrating a country, you got to have one flag, because that's the one standard. That's the whole country embodied in that symbol. So we had 14 unique things that make a country a country. And if you go down this list, you begin to wonder. One land, we get 700 islands. This is the Bahamas. 2, one national vision. Do we have that? Number 3, one language. You know, when I hear people talking about, you know, our kids being required to learn a second language because of the amount of people in our country who speak it, we are about to destroy our country. Now, I can learn a language for the sake of commerce, business, expansion of our national vision, for example, tourism. I can learn Chinese, or Japanese, or French because we have French citizens. But I'm not going to learn it because we get a group of French people here, or Japanese people here, who require that they maintain their language. Therefore, I got to learn their language to communicate with them. This is the destruction of a country. So when we talk about language, there's only one language.
Y'all corrupt dogs. Y'all hear my? Y'all hear my?
For example,
the late Dr. Myles Munroe.
Very critical.
Y'all hear it?
And by the way, the immigration problem is
talking nonsense. I have to learn nothing from nobody. Got to learn what I say.
Matter of fact, I found some references for you, and I put them in a statement to you there in that document. Where in the book of Leviticus and the book of Deuteronomy, when God was settling the nation of Israel, there's a whole lot in the back page. You see a whole lot of references to the aliens among them, the stranger. Anyhow, one of the things we have to be careful with is, you remember, in the book of Genesis, the first person to create a country was a black man in the Bible. A black man created the first country in the Bible. His name was Nimrod. He's the first one to establish a city. So when you talk about black history, we begin as the first people to establish a country. This is documented in Genesis chapter 11. It's done by a black man who was called the Great Hunter. His name was Nimrod. And he built what they call a citadel, which we get our word city from. He brought everyone together in a central place. And he gave them, what you see on this list, he gave them one land, he gave them a national vision to build a tower. But this time, their ideology was a problem. They wanted to build unto themselves, forget about God who created them. So God made a determination that, you know, these people are so powerful because and he said to them, he says, if they agree on the same thing, and they agree to do the same thing, and they are unified, he said, nothing shall be impossible to them. In other words, when a country gets unified, they become dangerous even to God. And God decided to stop the project. How did God stop that project? He didn't send soldiers to attack them. He didn't send an army to attack them. He didn't send angels to attack them.
Deep.
The Bible simply said he confused their language.
And break up, that's how he'd stop it.
The fastest way to destroy a country
is to bring in a bunch of multiple languages.
People don't understand each other.
Right.
And when you start feeding the duplication of languages or the diversity of language in a country, you are basically eroding the very foundation of the unity of the country.
That's right.
And you are causing the projects to stop.
That's right.
You're shutting down your economy.
And that's what I call
And the scriptures actually says that the Tower of Babel cannot be built because the people could not understand each other. So God destroyed a country not by an army, but by confusing their languages. And when you start dabbling with triple languages and double languages, you are destroying your country. So this is very important for us to protect against. And I become concerned even when I hear people say, you know, well, it's important for our kids to learn 2 languages. No, it isn't. It's important for anyone who comes to our country to learn our language. Our language. Because that's the key to unity. And history has proven that any country that allows the inculcation of a separate culture and language will constantly become a victim of destruction. Right now, for example,
chaos and destruction.
I went to Ukraine 5 times. I spoke to one of my largest crowds. There are 30,000 white Ukrainians. I've been there for like 4 years directly speaking to them. My books are in Ukrainian and in Russian, so I've been in Russia many times. And one of the unique things, when I went to Ukraine, I asked them, what is your language? They said, well, it depends on where you live. And I said, how can a country have more than one language? They said, well, you know, so many people here who are Ukrainians, they still have allegiance to Russia. Well, that was about 10 years ago when I finally saw it come to fruition. Today there's a war going on where people are destroying their own countries because there's a sect of the country decided we have more allegiance to our so-called historical fatherland than we have to our new country. And now we see a war where people are killed. Over 30,000 people are already killed in the name of separatist spirit based on language. Matter of fact, if you listen to President Putin, he said those people are Russians because they speak Russian.
Yeah, that's what he said.
He didn't say because they eat Russian food. It was the language. And, you know, I would think that any country that wants to protect itself against disintegration will have to be very careful as to how it allows the perpetration of a second language in its country to become an official language of a group of people. And all through, you know, when I went to Africa, I mean, I go to like 4 times, 5 times a year now. And I went to most 13 countries. I'm going back in October. I'll be visiting 14 countries in 30 days. So I know what I'm talking about. When we go to those countries, right now, for example, in Nigeria, with Boko Haram and this situation, that's a tribal issue with the language. Nigeria has 357 dialects in one country. But they decided English is the common language. Otherwise, there'd be chaos. Okay, I went to Uganda, 87 languages. I went to Zambia, 52 languages. But they all agree, one language, English. If you want to come, you want to work in that country, you teach. And so all the people have to learn English. In other words, my point is, yeah, there may be many dialects, but there's got to be a commitment to one unified language, because without that language, there is disintegration of communication and communion and community, and we destroy a country.
Now, I know that you speak this, and we have been able to deduce from what you said, and our listeners today, who are particularly interested in drumming this home, how this comes. Now, of course, certainly what you've said, we can look at that and take from it that, yes, we are now ourselves caught in a position where there are people who are saying that we must learn this Creole, to be quite frank with you, or some Spanish or whatever, but mostly the Creole. Now, our language is English. Many Bahamians take exception to that, Dr. Myles Munroe. And I don't know if you're aware of it because you are a traveling man, but I'm sure that you keep your ears to the ground. And since you listen to the show, you would know that since the last, maybe 3 months, some things have happened in the Bahamas that are rather unusual. Traditional radio stations have opened the airwaves for long hours, not just 30 minutes or an hour, as was sometimes accepted, or 5 minutes in years gone by, but have opened it up to the airwaves now to the people of Haiti who have come to the Bahamas, who in fact have their own radio shows all the time, and of course they are speaking this language, and there is no interpretation, there is no translation, except if the host decides that he's going to say what that one particular fellow or whatever says. Now, this is dangerous. People have been calling my show. People have been texting me. People have been writing. They're concerned about this because they see this as now at the beginning of this confusion, like what Brother Nimrod had started.
Yes.
You see? They see now here that all of these people have come together on this rock. We're all from Africa, originally, basically. All of us are supposed to be brothers and sisters, but there are some who don't want to conform to the ways of the country that they've met it. They want to do their own thing and bring their own cultures here. Now, I know I'm talking strong today when I say that, and I'm saying that because I want to give you the reality check that this is what it is. It's that bad now to the point where there's no more playing around with it. They are doing it their way, and we better come along because they're aggressive and they're doing their thing. The country, the Bahamians for the most part, are very passive people. They're not so much into any confrontation. The whole idea is that we are helping with this process of confusion and disintegration of the country because we now are confusing the languages. It's absolutely happening.
You know, I don't like to deal with facts too much because facts change. I'm a man, because I also travel a lot and deal with so many different groupings and peoples and cultures, I've come to learn the most important thing in life, and that is principles are more important than facts. And it's more important to learn a principle than to learn a fact, because a fact is always temporary. The fact that I'm here is temporary. It's not a principle that I'm present here. Principles are laws. And one thing with principles and laws, you don't violate them. They violate you. You don't disobey a principle. You disobey your own safety. And it's a principle that we must protect the common language if we're going to protect the unity of the country. And when I heard an announcement made that there would be a period of time, for example, on a couple of radio stations here, there would be allotting time to the second language that's being perpetrated here in the country, I personally called one of the owners of the station, and I said to him, I spoke to him for an hour on the radio, on the telephone. I never do this, but I called him because I knew that he's about to violate a principle. First I asked him, why are you doing this? His response was, it's a financial motivation. You know, I can't make enough money through normal advertising, etc., so I need to survive, and so this is when we'll be making money. And I said to him, do you realize what you're doing? He said, I don't know what you're talking about. I said, do you understand that you are making a decision that is so serious and grave that it could actually cause national destruction of a country? He said, that's impossible. And then I explained to him the principle behind nation building and national security. And I explained to him that language is one of the most, matter of fact, in the building block of countries, language is number 2. First is land, then there's common language. That's why when they came under the British made everyone speak English. They didn't care where you came from. If you are in the Commonwealth, you had a common language. We were forced to forget our African language. Why? Because the British knew that if they allowed the perpetration of diversity of languages, they can never unify the Commonwealth. And that's why we are a country today. You know, the British were not the best as far as the way they treated us. But one of the best things they did was they literally gave us one language. That made us very easy to become a country. And then they left us with one piece of land. That made us a country. And then they gave us a constitution. That made us a country. Then they gave us a body of law. That made us a country. These things are already built in. If you start tampering with diversity of language and perpetrating the division of language, you are destroying the country. So I said to the gentleman, I said, look, I would like to advise you to reconsider this very seriously and perhaps maybe even, reverse this contract, because once this gets started, there's no way that you can control what's going to happen. I think after an hour speaking with him, he agreed with me. He said, what do I do now? I said, well, I don't know, because you've already signed a contract. I said, but I do want to say that if that contract comes to an end, I suggest you never renew that contract. Because you cannot encourage, especially in a small country like ours,
very true,
the introduction of a community being inculcated separate from the stream of the common language of the country to develop their own culture. Now remember, that language and culture are intertwined. They're almost one. In other words, what makes a person culture exposed is their language. When you speak Spanish, and I assume you're from a Spanish-speaking country, so your language actually tells your heritage. So if you speak English right away, I know that you're from an English-speaking country. So I am very concerned, and I understand that there are 2 media houses now that have encouraged this. I want to warn them.
3 of them.
I want to warn them as a fellow brother, as a fellow citizen, as a fellow community responsible leader, to really be careful. Understand what you're doing. You are basically creating the foundation of division, of dissension, of disintegration. You are tampering with the thread that keeps a country together.
For money. And
you could actually end up being the perpetrators eventually of what might be happening in the Ukraine, where a group of people can actually make a plan that you can't even understand. Matter of fact, it's possible for them to be communicating things across the air to a specific group of people that is detrimental to our country, and we don't even understand it. I don't understand it, and I doubt that the Prime Minister understands it either. So, there can be also communication taking place with their land, from their heritage, in their language, and they can have codes that they use. In other words, you can't afford to perpetrate that. Now, I'm not saying that people should speak that. I don't think that anyone can stop me from speaking languages. I think that's important. Language is important for me too. I speak German. I speak a little bit of Spanish. I get along. I speak Portuguese because I go to Brazil a lot. I studied German actually in school, so I speak German fairly fluently. But I think when you start talking about encouraging the development of a separate language in a country and feeding it, you are basically a party to national insecurity or national security danger. You're also a party to national destruction. And I want to warn these stations. If you're motivated by money, and you put money over your own country, perhaps your license may not be deserved to be considered for reissuing. Because the most important thing in our country is and should be the security of our country, the protection of our country. And I'm saying this not again because of the facts. The principle of history has shown that wherever there was an inculcation of a separate subculture in any country, eventually that culture became a danger. In Israel, in Egypt, Pharaoh became concerned because the Egyptian saw the Israelites multiplying. And Pharaoh said, if we allow this to happen, then eventually their sons will become stronger than us, and then when they go to war, who are they going to fight for? Will they fight with the Egyptian, or will they fight with them, the enemy?
Understood.
And this is the question. And I think we did have an example of this some time ago when there was a visitation of the Haitian president here. I don't know much about all the details that went on behind the scenes, but I do know that if someone comes to a country like that and, there's a private dinner and some, people are invited, I got no problem with that. But you're talking about a rally.
Yeah.
That's a different issue.
Very dangerous.
If President Obama comes to the Bahamas, he'd probably have a dinner at the embassy or the ambassador's residence, invite some of the, Americans, and that's fine. That's fine.
That's acceptable.
Yeah, but I don't even have a rally in the Bahamas for Americans. This is dangerous. So I think, again, when you talk about the principle of national security here, when people come to your country, they should learn the common language. They should be required to learn that language.
Dr. Munroe, you would have thought that we would have learned from that. The episode that the example you gave just now with Martilly, the Haitian president coming here, that happened about just prior to the general elections of 2012. You would have thought that we would have learned from that, because let's look at the facts. I'm a man who deals with the facts.
Yeah.
The principles too, which is important. From this, you look at the facts. The facts were that he came here unbeknown to the people of this country, the citizens. But they knew, the ones who were here from his country, they knew he was coming.
Yeah.
We didn't know he was coming. I worked in media, and we didn't know he was coming.
It's very serious.
Now, I worked in media every day for the last 32, 33 years.
Yes.
Doing talk radio, and did not know he was coming. I'm trying to show you something.
Wow.
I did not know he was coming, and I like to believe that I know everything when it comes to what's happening in this town. But we did not know he was coming. One or two people in some form of politics may have known, but they didn't make that known to the people. But you know what was so strange? That when he came, there was not one radio ad, nothing heralding his coming, yet that auditorium was packed to capacity and overflowing with the people of his countrymen that night. Now, what am I saying? How did they get the word out?
The implication could be the implication is even more serious, and that is that there could be an underground culture or a counterculture that exists in the country. And, one day we went, as a church, we took our people out street walking, and we went, in a couple of areas. And I personally walked the streets, went into the back of those alleys. I walked into these houses and introduced myself. And Steve, I'm still trying to get over it. And that was about 4 years ago. I'm still trying to get over what I discovered. I discovered that there were villages behind the village in Nassau.
Village behind the village.
There were families there who couldn't speak English. And these houses are, maybe 2 bedrooms had 50 people in it, seemed like, and they were all from a different culture. And my fear rose, and I said, if there was a rallying call any day for something to happen, we would probably go into shock with regards to what is being allowed to be festered here. So for the radio media to actually get involved and encouraging that, I think it's irresponsible for those media houses. I don't think they've done any research to even check to see what the results of that kind of activity would mean on a community, on national development, national interests. Have they done any studies on the impact it would have on the grouping of people coming out and becoming part of the mainstream of a country versus them staying locked into their environment because we are encouraging them to stay within the environment? Let me tell you something. If it's like you inviting me to your house. No, I come to your house, and I stay in your house for 5 years, and I have some kids, and we live in one of the rooms in your house, and we speak a language different from yours in your house. And every time I go to the room, we talk in our language in your house. And when I come out, sometimes we talk at the table, we eating with you, but we talk to each other in our native language in your house, in your presence. You don't know what we're saying about you. We don't know how we plan to take over the house. And you have 2 kids now, we got 5 in the room. There's more of us than you. And you can't understand what we're planning. I mean, to me, the Bahamas is our house. I think if anyone comes to work for you right away, you want to make sure they can speak English. At least they can understand you somehow. You wouldn't want to hire somebody who you can't communicate with. They wouldn't even know what you ask them to do. So I think it may be simplistic, but it is realistic.
Absolutely.
And that is, we have a component in our country who don't speak our language. Not just the English I'm talking about, but there's a language behind every language.
Right.
We understand each other as Bahamians. Do people understand the Bahamian? When the Bahamian thinks, speaks, or even don't talk, do we understand the Bahamian? And I think it's required for all countries to make sure that anyone who have an interest in becoming part of that country, that they literally become immersed in that country's culture, beginning with language. I found a couple of statements here that I thought was interesting in the book of Leviticus. This is like 4,000 years old. It says, when an alien lives with you, this is found in Leviticus chapter 24. When an alien lives with you in your land, do not mistreat him. The alien living with you must be treated as one of your native born. Love him as yourself, for you were aliens in Egypt also. You are to have the same law for the alien and the native born. I am the Lord. Same law. Then it says, if any one of your countrymen becomes poor and is unable to support himself among you, help him as you would an alien or a temporary resident, so he can continue to live among you. Do not take interest of any kind from him, but fear God, so that your countrymen may continue to live among you. You must not lend him money at interest or sell him food at a profit. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt. Leviticus 25. If an alien or a temporary resident among you becomes rich, and one of your countrymen becomes poor and sells himself to the alien, are you listening? Living among you, or you are to be a member of the alien's clan, he retains the right of redemption after he has sold himself. Numbers 9:14. An alien living among you who wants to celebrate the Lord's Passover must do so in accordance with its rules and regulations. You must have the same regulations for the alien and for the native born. Notice how many times the Lord mentions the same. Now, Numbers 15:14. If the generations to come, whenever an alien or anyone else living among you presents an offering made by fire as an aroma to the Lord, he must do exactly as you do. The community is to have the same rules for you and for the alien living among you. The communities have the same rules for you and the alien living among you. This is a lasting ordinance for the generations to come. God's in protecting the generation. You and the alien shall be the same before the Lord. The same laws and regulations will apply to both you and the alien living among you. I'm required to speak English. Now this is 4,000 years old. Same problem. It's not, this immigration problems are old. And here you see biblically God's dealing with it as he builds a country. Deuteronomy 10 says, he defends the cause of the fatherless and the widows and loves the alien, giving him food and clothing. And you are to love those who are aliens, for you yourselves were once aliens. Remember I told you we're all immigrants? Mm-hmm. Well, once we decide to settle down and create a country, then the alien among us must also be under the same regulations, same rule. You can't have a private culture. There shouldn't be no village somewhere that have their own private, language and private privacy. He says, make sure they are all following the same regulations, the same rules. So when I read some of these things, I'm amazed at how advanced the Bible is. The Bible is so advanced that we hate it, because nothing so old could be so correct. I think that's why people hate the Bible. Here's another one I thought was interesting. It says, do not deprive the alien or the fatherless of justice, or take the cloak of the widow as a pledge. Remember that you were also slaves in Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you from that. That is why I command you to do this with the alien. I want to warn our big people that we must be, appreciative of people coming into the country. Countries are made of, like I say, diversity. Mm-hmm. But once you decide to become a part of a country, then the land, the law, the language, the culture, the values, the morals got to become common. Otherwise, you become like the Tower of Babel.
That's right.
All the diversity stops the projects, and they can't build the country. And one of the things I hear you say all the time, Steve,
even in his death, his words echo truthfully.
A country.
That's correct.
You can't build a country with diversity of values and cultures and moral standards where some people believe this, some believe that, different ideals.
Yeah.
One thing in the United States is that when you become a citizen of that country, they give you something to read.
Yeah.
That page is read.
They believe in assimilation. They don't believe in
absolutely. The important word you made just now.
The assimilation.
Yeah, and I think that's what the scriptures are saying here. It says in Deuteronomy 28, verse 15, if you do not obey the Lord your God and do not carefully follow all of his commands and decrees I am giving you today, these curses shall come upon you. Let me read one of the curses. The alien who lives among you will rise above you and will be higher and higher than you. And you will sink lower and lower. He will lend to you, but you will not lend to him. He will be the head, but you will be the tail. Read this again, because I think we are probably close to this.
Yeah, I think we are.
Deuteronomy 28:43. If you don't obey the laws I lay down to you today, says the Lord, the alien who lives among you will rise above you, higher and higher. But you will sink lower and lower. He will lend to you, and you will not lend to him.
In other words, they're in charge.
And he will be the head, and you will be the tail. I'm wondering if we're not almost there.
Well, that's one of the reasons why we're doing this series, because most people believe that we're there. On the precipice of being there, if not. Because here it is now, we don't know the numbers.
In the name of Yahweh Elohim.
We hear what they say the numbers are. Those numbers that Mr. Mitchell, the immigration minister, spoke of, these numbers were from 2002, based upon a study that was 4 years prior to that was enunciated by the then Minister Vincent Peter of Immigration, who has been out of politics all this time. So this is 2014. Yeah. And the bottom line is that we don't know what numbers we have, and all we see, they keep coming. Now, Dr. Munroe, when you say the alien, and you look at where we are in this country, more than likely, they are in bigger numbers, larger numbers than we are. We don't even know the population of this country now. We're still saying, even after 10 years and the census was done, it only grew by, 500 people or something. 350,000 we keep saying. Now, some other information that I was able to obtain from the International Development Bank, looking at some other areas of development in the Bahamas, will peg that number 372,000.
Yeah, that sounds more realistic.
In 2012, 372,000. What am I saying? We don't know the numbers, and we're the officials. We are supposed to be the administrators of the law. This is supposed to be a country of laws. We see people breaking the law every day to get into this country, and there's nothing being done in a meaningful way to extract them and to bring some kind of clarity, some kind of sense to the madness. And thus we have people who are now believing that based on one of the components you talked about, One of those things on the 14th list was Constitution.
Yes.
Constitution of the Bahamas seemed to be in error or not so clear on one of the articles as it relates to those persons who would have said a person born in the Bahamas to non-citizens shall be entitled to. Now, I want to stop right there for a second because I want you to really succinctly speak to that because, Dr. Munroe, I'm confused on a couple of things. First, this alien. Is this alien just another word for a foreign person, or is this alien an illegal person who's in the country? See, all of these things our Constitution seems to be very silent on. It doesn't say if the person is married, legal, was passing through the territory, or happened to have a baby. It just says a person born in the Bahamas to parents, non-citizens of the Bahamas, shall be entitled to make an application, I will use that one, at the age of 18, with the focus of having him or her being registered to be a citizen. It seems egregious to many people when they look at it. All over the years it's been perpetrated as, no, don't worry about that. Yet at the age of 18, we have another influx of people at the counters of immigration demanding citizenship and claiming that we are entitled to it.
Yeah.
Because it says that. So I'm asking you, who's the alien? Is the alien just a foreign person in this term? There's terminology. Does it express itself as it's a foreign person, a foreigner? Does it speak to an alien being a person who comes into a country illegally? Because then if we're a country of laws and they've broken law to come into the country, how come would they have rights in a country where they've broken the laws to be and they're here illegally?
It's a very good question, very important question. I think the key way to speak, first of all, is the country of laws. The Bahamas, as I objectively look at my country, which I love so much, we have I don't know the word is impediment, a national epidemic. I think we have a disease, maybe, a national disease, of what I call the spirit of neglect. And this is happening in all areas of national development. There's a spirit of neglect. And the reason why we have problems in the country is because we create laws, but we never enforce them or impose them. You think with all the problems we have right now, they are all related to that disease. Some of it's going on for a long time. We kind of pretend it doesn't exist. We ignore it. We hope it goes away. We hope that someone else will take care of it. And so this thing festers. And that's because we do not enforce the law. I think we are suffering from being a lawless nation where the chickens are coming to roost, we call it. We are eating sour grapes. No, our teeth are on edge, put it this way. Our forefathers ate sour grapes by not enforcing the laws. We are now having our teeth on edge. And the teeth is hurting so much, we do something about it, but we don't know what to do because the problem is historical. How do you correct a historical problem? I think this is the big question, whether we're dealing with numbers, whether we're dealing with immigration, whether we're dealing with land, rights to land. The big issue is, how do you correct history now? And it was seen that the only way to correct history is, first of all, to go back to the law and read the law and see if the law can be imposed after 70, 80 years of neglect. Is it possible? And that's what I think our authorities are grappling with. Can we impose these laws? I remember when we discussed, for example, the immigration issue, and we were speaking to Mr. Loftus-Roker, who was one of our leading founding fathers, and he came to our center, and along with the other founding fathers, and the issue of immigration came up. And he said, some of the laws that were written back then were very simple and clear because we inherited them, of course, from the British, and the context of them were different. Where, for example, if a person got married, if a Bahamian got married to a foreigner, then the child of that marriage took the father's heritage as far as the country automatically. In other words, the father was from Jamaica, and he married a Bahamian, and they had a baby. The child was considered Jamaican. He said that's the way the law was written, very simple. Where we power from, that's where you're from. That has been changing, and in some cases, of course, not actually imposed. But then we have the immigration issue where people came in not marrying anyone. They came illegally. The law says certain things were illegal immigration. You come in here illegally, you are illegal, you're supposed to go back. We're supposed to arrest you and go back. We didn't do that. We never did it. It hasn't been done. And every time we bring a contemporary government into play and we give someone the Ministry of Immigration, the guy tries to go and collect a couple of people, PR, right, you know, because what we're doing is trying to put a Band-Aid on a hemorrhaging that is old as 30, 40 years. I think we need to just be honest, say, look, I like what the Bible says, you know, after 7 years, you forgive all debts, and you start over. I think we're almost there. Where we can say, okay, if someone's been here for 30 years, 40 years, whose fault is that? Is it their fault that they were able to stay here? Or is it our fault as a country and a government for allowing them to stay here? I think that's the question. Because it's even simple to say the law says thus and so go back home. But wait a minute. You know, the same is true about the knowledge issue. And I'll say to the guys, you know, we can clamp the law on you and we can lock you up. But in fact, they can say, you know something, you allowed us to play in the street all these years. We built a house in the street because you told us not to play in the street, but you never came and got us out of the street. You didn't punish us. So now, who's guilty? The ones who broke the law or those who allowed it to be broken? Again,
those who allow it to be broken.
If you do not enforce law, you are a lawbreaker as well. I want to repeat that. If you don't enforce law that you created, you are a lawbreaker also. And so it is like, when you tell your children certain things, you say, I'll punish you if you do certain things. If the kid tries it, you don't punish him. He tries it a second time, third time. Now the question is, who's really the problem? Is it the kid who's testing it, or is it the parent who's not enforcing it? And so after 20, 30 years of neglect, then the question, okay, how do I bend this tree that's grown up now? You know, I need to saw this down. Do I kill the fruit that comes from this tree, which means the kids? Am I destroying a forest? We need to be kind of honest with ourselves, accept some responsibility as a country, and that's why in our recommendations that we made to the Constitution, as a group, we gave a very specific recommendation to the Constitutional Commission, and we said to them what our recommendation was. And I want to remind them of that. We said that they should appoint a commission, an independent commission, because this is too complicated, to study the issue, to come up with recommendations that are reasonable. And I want to read that from our recommendation. It says that there should be a constitution. We propose that they form a commission on citizenship and immigration reform. And the commission is to conduct research and make recommendations to the Parliament of ways to define and change the nation's policy on citizenship and immigration matters in the Constitution and the law. In other words, go back to the Constitution and the law to fix that first before you start dealing with people. It should be made up of at least 15 members from various backgrounds, including reputable Bahamians of Haitian, Jamaican, American descent as well. This commission should be chaired by a well-respected Bahamian with no public allegiance to any political party. The commission should identify a clear process leading to citizenship that is widely circulated in the public domain. And the final decision on citizenship should be established by a way of criteria that negate the need for the political directorate making the final decision. In other words, take it out of the hands of the politicians. The final decision should be made by a respected public body which is subject to final approval by the Bahamas government. In other words, constitutional concern as it relates to children born out of a married Bahamian parent. This kind of issue is so complicated, we have to take it out of politics. And I believe a commission that can do the research and study properly and really get the information you're dealing with now could then have these intelligent minds come together and say, look, what is the most reasonable, fair, honest, responsible way of addressing this? Because we cannot blame the alien. I use the word alien again. I think the Bible says the alien living among you. I think the term living among you is important. The person been here for a while, okay? If we allowed something to go on for 30, 40 years, we are also part of the blame. So for us to correct it, We have to be honest with ourselves, take responsibility, and even give an account of our own negligence. And so for us to fix this, we have to make sure we are fair, we are honest, we are sensitive. When I think about the children born of these parents, we made recommendations concerning that. And, we believe, for example, and our recommendation was very clear, the Constitution provides that the spouse may be dealt with spouses as well. People get married to Bahamian. We give them some kind of recommendations there. But I want to deal with when we talked about the children. It says that there are countries who allow birthright citizenship, direct or indirectly, and they recognize the right of all people to live as humans. Once persons are afforded the right to life and liberty, the society will benefit. For example, the United States has benefited from immigration over the past centuries. Immigrants from Africa, Asia, Europe contributed to their expertise in many fields to form the United States into a military and economic power that it is today. Bahamian, therefore, policy must also consider those things. In 2002, the Parliament of the Bahamas passed the Status of Children Act, 2002. Its purpose was to provide illegitimate children, now referred to as children born out of wedlock, with the same rights and protections as children born in wedlock. The legislators finally recognized the fact that children are not responsible for their birth, or their status, or the circumstance in which they were conceived. And that's important. All children are innocent and helpless at birth. It was therefore unjust to punish children for the conduct of their parents. The same reasoning should be applied to children born to undocumented parents, recognizing the fact that children are undocumented immigrants, are innocent victims of circumstances. All children born within a country should have the automatic citizenship in that country, irrespective of whether or not that parent had legal status when they entered into the country. Once again, these children should not be punished for their behavior of their parents. And I want to quickly support that with a statement. Citizenship should be granted based on the conviction that all humans have a right to life, liberty, and the international community has observed this through the creation of the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, especially Article 15. Article 15 of the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights states, everyone has the right to nationality. No one should be arbitrarily deprived of his nationality, nor denied the right to change his nationality.
Amen.
So one of the things that we suggest is this. Immigration registration policy and requirement to swear allegiance should be a test given to every applicant for citizenship. When we talk about people becoming citizens, I think one of the things that we don't do is this assimilation issue we talked about. If we accept, and let me just read one more document here that I think is important. It says, our recommendation number 5 to the Commission. We believe that application of just solely